All right, well, I'll start off in saying my name is Sabrina. You guys can go ahead.
I am Scott.
My name is Dan.
We're going to be discussing chapter 5 and chapter 6. I'll start it right off by talking about an imaginary startup. What I started was Ecotech Innovation. It's just your atypical tech company. I think some of the first things that you really need when starting a business is sustainability, making decisions with the environment in mind. I know nowadays safety and environment is a huge thing with the overdevelopment that's happening in a lot of areas. Collaborative creativity, teamwork fuels innovation and creativity. Getting different perspectives, diverse perspectives, people from all over the place, have so much intel that they can get in. Continuous learning. Everyone has the opportunity to grow and learn. I know at my company, we do these things called Kaizens for continuous improvement. What continuous improvement is just constantly growing as a company, what we can do next and what we can make more efficient and cost effective. Like I had mentioned before, diversity, inclusion, different perspectives make us stronger. And being customer centered based, giving your customers that direct feedback to make your product a little bit more efficient for everyone involved. Um, let's see here. Organizations as cultures and systems, I think differences is that we view organizations as cultures. We focus on meaning and values in contrast to systems, perspectives, looking at processes and structures in a way. Some similarities, I think both perspectives recognize that everything in an organization is interconnected. Um, a cultural metaphor for that could be kind of gaining traction due to social changes and historical events. With social changes, there can be growing emphasis on employee engagement and well-being. In historical events, participation, management, that kind of has a big role, getting the employees to be a little bit more engaged in the actual company. We do a pulse survey, which gives us direct feedback from the employees, which ultimately drives our Kaizens and our improvements down the line. Let's
When it comes to systems,
Mhm.
for systems theory, which you see a lot in it's a communication theory. It's one of the base ones that we've all kind of
Mhm.
looked at, but it focuses on the relationships between different parts.
Exactly.
In systems theory, you get positive synergy when all of the parts contribute together and it's greater than what they could do individually.
Mhm.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly.
However, for culture, I kind of interpreted that as much more homogenous. So
Mhm.
if you were to look at a company that's running via systems theory, you've got, the relationship between, say, manufacturing and shipping,
Mhm.
or HR and sales floor people. And all of those relationships contribute to the end user experience for consumers. Whereas when you consider it with culture, those different departments don't matter so much. It is simply Google. Like that, there is one Google. There is no like, oh
Yes.
yeah, no, like people don't say in there, I work for Google's analytics, I work for Google's HR. They say I work for Google, as
Mhm.
opposed to in systems theory where you'd be like, yep, shipper here, or
Mhm.
manufacturer.
Yeah, it's a little bit more compartmentalized than the broader picture when you have that sort of recognition or brand. I know with culture like Google, it's just a pride you hold on. Like I work for Google. Like I might be a coder, I might be an analyst, but yeah, I work for Google versus like, yeah, I have a CDL, like I'm a truck driver, like Truck America, like kind of that sort of aspect. So I agree with you on that. Dan, do you have anything to say on that?
I was just going to talk about how you mentioned product innovation. Um, so I on the side I resell shoes.
Mhm.
So I'm like constantly trying to figure out what everyone likes, what the economy is after right now. And obviously it's Nike Jordan, but recently people have been buying Asics. I
Yeah.
was like, Asics hasn't been a popular brand since the early 2000s, I guess. So just to keep up with the economy and see what everyone's liking, That's what you have to do to be a successful business these days.
And I agree with you. The trends nowadays, I feel like we're like going through a little cycle. Like the
Mhm.
90s are back, the early 2000s are back.
That's
We're
so
going
weird.
to like the dad mowing lawn shoes, the New
Mhm.
Balances in that aspect. Like being on brand, especially when you're reselling things, like you want people to be like,
Mhm.
yes, I want those. Like that's the next thing. So you also have to like stay ahead of the trends at some points as well.
Mhm.
Awesome. And a couple different approaches I think you can take to organizational culture, descriptive, functionalist and critical approaches. Descriptive, kind of more or less describes the cultural elements within a business. Functionalist kind of shows how the culture helps organizational function, like what you said with like Google. Um, how that culture, they're never going to be short stocked of having employees recruiting coming in. They have that brand, they have that pride. So they're never going to have to use a third party to be like, hey, we need people coming in, like we're really short staffed. As well as the critical approach focusing on power dynamics and resistance. I know with Mac, we have a lot of issues in this area due to manpower, especially. We're on a hiring freeze right now. And we're trying to use what we have right now to kind of fill those gaps. And that kind of goes back with dynamics and resistance because some people don't want to move. They don't want to fill in those gaps where we're keeping our attrition inside rather than just keep filtering in these people that are going to leave after a couple of months. So that's more of the critical approach.
That is an excellent spot for especially when we're talking about the critical or kind of
Mhm.
postmodern approach to organizational culture, where Martin had that taxonomy of perspectives that you can see,
Mhm.
where cultures are either integrated, differentiated, or fragmented. Especially with what we were saying earlier, with culture kind of being viewed as a homogenous thing,
Mhm.
that is going to be the integrated culture. I don't know if you guys are like movie guys. I am. But Michael Keaton did that movie where he was Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, and like, or the
Yes,
guy who
I
made
actually
McDonald's
have
what it
seen
is
that.
today.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's that point where he so creates that integrated culture that it pushes out the actual McDonald brothers because of what
Mhm.
McDonald's has become. So that's both a great example of that integrated culture and kind of the critical perspective, the postmodern perspective of it. Like that was there was his power and the resistance to it that kind of forced them out.
I think that's a great reference. I love that you use that in comparison to what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Um,
like nobody really wants to work somewhere that has like a bad name. Like I've known some people that I've met throughout the years say they worked at Amazon. Amazon doesn't exactly have the best, I guess,
we
employee
get a
benefits or
huge
whatever.
overstock from Amazon at Mac Trucks.
Yeah,
And I've never heard a good thing about it, which is
actually
crazy because
super
they
good.
advertise like they do all of these things that they pay so well, but in
Yeah,
reality, like it's a
no one
toxic
wants
work environment.
just little stuff like that. Brand name, I feel like means so much today. Like no one wants to work at a crappy company or that has a bad
Mhm. I know. And it's so hard, I feel like nowadays to like with social media and, just such easy access to the internet to like start a business and keep it afloat
name.
and having the culture and the name versus like all these like businesses that have been around like oh yeah like this is a generational business like my grandfather retired from there like my dad retired I'm going to retire there. I feel like now people are just constantly moving around and it doesn't really give new businesses, I feel like, the chance to survive like a generational one would.
Yeah.
That is kind of a great transition, especially talking about Amazon and their
Mhm.
repeated kind of abuses. I'll
Oh.
go ahead and say it, abuses of their workforce. We can kind of transition into chapter 6 there, which is about the critical approach. And of course, Eisenberg et al. Opens up chapter 6 by talking about where the critical approach kind of came from and the circumstances that led to the critical approach to organizations, and about how that kind of coincided with the fall of Western colonialism, where people were generally just more mistrusting of power. And you were looking at France and you were looking at Britain giving up huge tracts of Africa where they had previously had these territories, and kind of going in lockstep with that, maybe we gave these corporations a little too much power and leeway and ability to, I mean, in the corporation, the documentary, they openly called themselves plunderers, which is kind of rough and wild to hear from people who are, put in charge of these companies. But when we look at what they have done specifically, there are the Eisenberg et al. Mentions the gassings from coal mines. There were fires. Of course, we all have references of ecological disasters. BP, Exxon, people like that have done some really unpleasant things. And Amazon, like you mentioned, they kill people, workers in their warehouse. I was someone who worked in the warehouse, and there was a body that was in a parking lot for 3 days before people got involved. But they have continued on through like extreme weather and things like that with no air conditioning, where people are dropping around like heat stroke. And that is why we need this kind of critical perspective.
Mhm.
We've kind of let a lot of things go for a long time when it comes to some companies, and it's good to have these kind of resistance strategies in place. Have either of you guys worked somewhere where there is like even if not an organized employee resistance, like how do your fellow coworkers kind of blow off steam? And is there some of, like Eisenberg et al., this is not my word, you guys do some bitching?
So at Mac, we're a union plant. So a lot of them go and do their bitching to their union rep, and then they come to us and bitch at us. So that would be, I feel like, their outlet, especially because we're not a climate controlled space. There is no AC. We have fans that are literally called big ass fans. Like they're huge industrial sized fans, but it gets super hot in the summer. It's gross. We try to tell our people like stay hydrated. One thing that we do to kind of build morale is we give out like popsicles sometimes when it's super hot. We give out like liquid IVs and things of that nature. But like it's not fun. And unfortunately, middle class workers, blue collar workers, things in that nature, they are the backbone of corporate America. They are the reason. So at least we try to do everything so that there isn't that resistance, there isn't that strain between the white collars and the blue collars. We want them to feel like we have their backs and we understand what they're going through.
Yeah, so like I said, I work at a gym. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Spooky Nook Sports.
Yeah, I actually
Yeah.
been there a couple of times.
It's
Yeah.
like one of the biggest gyms in America, and so I work the tournaments where there's like basketball tournaments and
Those are
stuff.
insane. There's
Yeah,
like thousands of people
crazy.
there.
So I'd be in charge in charge of like 4 basketball courts, and I'd have to deal with like breaking up fights and stuff like that. And usually to blow off steam, I would just try to like get the biggest possible security guard next to my court, so I wouldn't have to deal with all that stuff. But yeah,
Like if you come to me, you gotta go through
yeah,
it.
like you can go talk to this guy.
That's so funny. I know there's like so many different, I feel like, areas of resistance, and you can relate to it, I can relate to it, and you can relate to it, like in all of our different areas that we work. I mean, it's the same
Mhm.
thing essentially. But going back to the corporation, I think that we see a lot of those themes of power, control, resistance. The film itself critiques corporate cultures and that they prioritize the profit, the money versus the social responsibility that they have to their workers. Going back to what I said, corporate America is based off of the backbone of our workers, and a lot of those are immigrants. They're lower class. They didn't go to college. They maybe went to a trade school, or most of them just have a high school diploma or a GED. And it highlights the need balance between the business goals and the ethical goals that they need to have. And I feel like there needs to be some sort of union of both. Like the business can be better if you have happier workers that want to do good for you.
Mhm.
So,
I I,
yeah.
w- I will say that the critical approach does have its drawbacks, its limitations. Like, I know I have been very much kind of championing it through this discussion,
Mm,
but I think first and foremost, one of the drawbacks that I saw with the theory is that it automatically starts off with the corporation as an enemy. When you are looking for fault in something that and everything that something or someone does, it doesn't really leave a lot of room for growth. And if you're a corporation and you are dealing with someone who is, has this critical theory lens looking at you, it's kind of like they hate me and they hate everything I do anyway. So I might as well just maximize my profit as opposed to making concessions to these people who are still gonna hate me, more or less. I don't know if anyone else saw any kind of limitations in the critical lens.
No, I agree with you 100% on
Yeah, I
that.
do too.
Like might as well do it to 100% than rather doing it to 50. If I'm gonna,
Yeah.
get in trouble, essentially, might as well just, maximize the penalties in that area. So I agree with you.
One of the other things that came up that I was kind of interested in, just because of my perspective on it. I'm obviously a little bit older than you guys. Been
What
working for
now?
been working for a little bit longer. So I thought French and Raven's types of power were
Mhm.
interesting and how they kind of gained compliance from people. So there was that reward power, which is, get do this and you will be rewarded. It's a good thing. There's coercive power, which is, threatening. If you think of reward power as the carrot in front of the donkey, coercive power is the stick behind it. We've got that referent power, which is a little bit like a cult leader.
Mhm.
Expert power, where
Kind of
someone
based
who
on
is,
admiration in that aspect.
yes,
Yep.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
Expert power, where the person who has the most knowledge about a thing is the authority. And then there's kind of legitimate power where it's like, well, we got to listen to this person because they're the boss. And I
Mhm.
was wondering if, like, of those five, I think most places I have worked have exercised a mix of kind of coercive and
I was just gonna
legitimate
say
power,
that.
really. And I was wondering if anyone had actually worked for someone that had kind of reward power and, got compliance from employees by promising good things. I feel like you see a good chunk of that in like sales positions, but
Mhm. I worked at an orthodontist as an orthodontist technician when I was in high school, like beginning of my college career. Very much coercive power in an aspect, like you do this wrong, like I will let you know, and you're not going to be happy with that outcome. Like you're not working tomorrow in that aspect. Like very condescending in a certain aspect, but if you did all the kiss butt, like what kiss butting, ass kissing, if you did all of that, in that nature, and you kind of went above and beyond, you'd be like, all right, I'll throw an extra $2 onto your hourly or something. Like he kind of
Mhm.
did, and that also follows back into like reward power in that kind of aspect, but it was very hot and cold in that. Like it was course or it was reward. And you were never kind of just like floating through, like going to work day by day. So that would be the only thing I
Yeah.
think would be the reward. Other than that, most of them are what you said, like course or I feel like expert or legitimate power as well.
Example I got a reward is in high school. I used to do like a landscaping job with like a few buddies, and our boss was like an older, cooler guy. And if we finished like before a certain time, he'd like take us out for lunch. He'd be like, "Oh, you guys can have the afternoon off," stuff like that.
Nice.
So we
Jealous.
wouldn't try to rush and like do a bad job, but we try to do it quickly so we could have free lunch. We didn't have any money. We're like,
Efficiently, yeah, yeah.
I feel like that also is like a generational thing as well.
"Mhm,
Like,
yeah,
some of the older people,
he's
like
trying to
they
help us
kind
out."
of, yeah, they've worked their whole life. They understand that like it's gonna get done regardless. Like, let's
Yeah.
just like ease into this. And if they get it done earlier for me, like, yeah, let's go out for lunch. Let me reward them because they're working hard for me and my business. I
Mhm.
feel like they're just nicer. Versus like nowadays, like everyone's very profit based and being like the most successful that they can be.
Uh, there are, as viewers may have noticed, there are only three of us here. So we didn't want to make you have to listen to our three voices for a full half an hour. So we're going to kind of wrap this up in a couple minutes. But one of the things that I was interested in you guys' perspective on is that we are kind of living and experiencing right now an effect of that critical perspective in the way school has changed. We've definitely changed the factory approach to schools that was popular during the Industrial Revolution. And there are new ways to organize education. And I kind of wanted to see if you guys had any thoughts on how that traditional model has changed, because I know The fact that I am in Harrisburg right now and am benefiting from a class at Kutztown University is definitely one of them. And I wondered if you guys had anything that was on the top of your mind for like, no, this is a definite deviation and it's kind of an awesome thing.
Dan, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So I think this whole COVID thing just shook everything up. Or I was a junior or senior, and ever since then, like online classes has been super accessible to everyone, and I think that has actually benefited than hurt. Or like, I don't even have to go to school to really. I'm just at home still working, making money, and I'm still taking classes.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with you 1000%. Like COVID happened my junior year of high school. I did completely online my senior year and then my first 2 years at community college. And because of that, I really got to build my resume up and kind of start my career early on in life, getting certificates and things of that nature. And if I wasn't able to take these online classes, like I wouldn't be able to work at my internship as many hours as I do building all this information and knowledge that I am. And I think they should offer it more. There should be like completely online programs and things of that nature. I know after graduating in May that I'm looking for an online master's program so that I am able to start my career while still furthering it at the same time. So COVID definitely had its negativity.
Mhm.
Really sad things happen, but I think it really shaped the economy in a more way that we're using the technology that we have to the fullest extent.
Yeah,
Do
for sure. Does anyone have any kind of final thoughts as we're wrapping up about,
you
culture, critical perspective, anything in between?
No, I think this honestly really goes to show like all of our different demographics, our ages, and we're still able to sit here and have a really good conversation. I don't think it was really awkward at any point. I think this flowed really nicely. So I appreciate you guys. This was really good
Sure.
conversation.
Likewise.
Yeah. And I hope anyone
Yeah.
that's listening as well can really take away from our experiences and kind of how we relate to these two chapters.
Thank you guys for recording with me. Thank everybody for listening.
Yeah. Have a good one, guys. Take care. I just end it.